Many blessings, everybody. Welcome back. We are going on a bit of a scattered adventure in our reasoning today. We will be looking far and wide with no particular goal in mind. I will be discussing a few characters from history who, again, I don't intend to assert any nefarious intentions. I will simply state that I do believe that they were, from our perspective here today, these characters were misguided. They were leading people to, reinforce their bias. And a lot of what I'm trying to do in this video is to dispel that bias and point out, so much of our mythology and scientism is founded on the cultural bias of some of these characters. And I just want to essentially give new context to that bias. In the concept of Darwinism and evolution, there is a phrase called out of Africa, that humanity came out of Africa, thereby placing the African genome as a fundamental or a base or a lower being. But I want to state clearly that I believe that is all highly politicized and a component of justifying the divine right of kings. Africa had kings. The whole concept of King Kong and glorifying a gigantic ape. It had its own racially charged weaponization of the concept originally, and they just made a whole nother King Kong movie. So that entire agenda is by no means taking a break on our watch. That is going on in our generation right now, and is the foundation of many of our elders' thoughts for those who came before us. So I am aiming to dispel a lot of that bias, and I want to point out that the monkey is not an African animal. The monkey is a South American animal. The monkey is an animal of India. It is not exclusive to Africa whatsoever. So right then and there, the entire concept of evolution and Darwin and the human genome coming from monkeys does not have an African origin whatsoever. So we can all just kick that one right in the balls. That's probably the most bias you guys have ever heard come out of me, but that's quite the insult, if you ask me. So let's bring this back into a more civilized tone, and I'm going to read a little poem from our man William Blake, who was no doubt subject to these Darwinian preconceptions. This comes from the poem The Tiger. What the hammer? What the chain? In what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil? What dread grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? And I think that kind of, for some of you, might sum up what I just mentioned. And in the context of, Toxoplasmosis gondii and its use for mind control purposes, I just want to kind of absolve these idiots of their preconceived notions. But at the same time, they are the elders, and there was much wisdom that came from them. So while we are dispelling their preconceived notions, at the same time, we have to value their bias in its cultural and temporal context. So, a couple of locations on the earth that are packed full of sacred monkey temples and worshiping of the monkey. There is a place in Honduras called La Ciudad Blanca that means the white city. Take that for what you will in the context of what I just got done saying. But it is a ancient city with beautiful art and much worshiping of the monkey god. And you can look that up. There are beautiful stories of that location. And in India, there is an entire city called Hampi that is dedicated to Hanuman, the monkey god. And on the art of the walls in Hampi, there are depictions of Hanuman helping out Rama in saving his Rama's wife, Siti, from capture. And Hanuman gets his army of monkeys to go far and wide and bring stones to build a peninsula that becomes a land bridge so that they can infiltrate a location where the wife of Rama is held captive, and they all live happily ever after. But I could not help but notice this Rama. You know, it definitely has that ram connotation, and we did have a papal decree, Vox in Rama, the voice of the ram, that sent out an anti-lion agenda, the killing of cats, the order to burn cats for their satanic uses. So I know that goes way further back than the Vox in Rama of 1244, but I just find it very interesting that these animal totems have a echo throughout history, and that is very significant. It goes back to very ancient times when we were much more in tune with our nature, our connection to nature, not in a evolutionary Darwinistic way. So here I've put down, the lineage of Darwin and his influencers through time and history. Darwin had a second nephew named Sigmund Freud, who had a second nephew named Bernays, who had a second nephew named Mark Bernays Randolph, who owns Netflix. And, one day I was sitting watching that television machine, and this word was flashing on the screen in front of me, and I couldn't help but give it a glimpse in reverse. And I saw a very interesting word come to light. Let me get my pen. If we could add just one leg to the word Netflix in reverse, if we could just put one little mark here, Netflix in reverse almost spells skeleton. And skeleton is skull and bones. We all know about the skull and bones and the Jolly Roger and the corp pirates that run the world. So I found that very interesting that, skeleton is almost reflected in the word Netflix. But when I see Netflix, I know that we are dealing with Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird is, flying the bird, the mockingbird. It's the middle finger to humanity, as is evolution and Darwinism. But when I see the word Netflix, I often think of this flicks as mockingbird flicking off humanity. It's quite a bit of mockery going on in the entire evolutionist mentality. That whole crabs in a bucket, kissing the ass of the cat in the royal family. A lot of people will tell you that secret societies exist to protect royalty. They exist to protect the status quo. And anybody who's ever dealt with the police, who have no obligation to protect you whatsoever, their protection goes, their allegiance goes to the status quo, which is the key bono of all the stories. So, another just interesting point, whenever I see Simon vilified in the Bible, Simon was quite a powerful character, and, he offered his fealty to the apostles and was shamed and demeaned many times in the biblical story. I can't help but see that, Simon, kind of echoes very similar to that term, Simeon, the monkey. And here I do believe, this word monkey has much to do with the keys of Solomon. And that first card, the magician card, the Magi. And Simon of the Bible was quite the Magi. So oftentimes, I believe that our words that we are given from these societies are designed to self-demean, to take the power away from some very influential characters throughout history, and to vilify them in very, shall we say, archaic ways. So that's it for this one. I guess I do have one more thing to read. This is a snippet from some online research that I did regarding Toxoplasmosis gondii. There is quite a bit of research out there to delve into, but this one in particular had to do with gender identity disorder and schizophrenia. And I do understand, and I want to put this forward, that this comes to us from an evolutionary Darwinistic spin. So there is much bias being expressed in this research, as the forefathers of anybody who's successful in today's education system. They all have that preconceived Darwin mentality. So this was written by Ravi Philip Rajkumar, which sounds very much like an Indian name to me. Ravi Philip, Rajkumar, and he's he's a academic, and that's about all I have on him. I am not sure where he's from, but that is the name of the person who put this paper together. And it's from 2.2 on his paper, and the title of this section is Beliefs Related to Gender Change in Schizophrenia. Beliefs or ideas related to gender change, historically termed metamorphosis paranoica sexualis by Richard von Krafft-Ebing, have been documented in schizophrenia for over a century. One of the most influential cases in the early literature on this disorder, Daniel Paul Schreiber, whom Freud used as the basis for his psychodynamic formulations of schizophrenia, experienced bizarre delusions in which he, Daniel Paul Schreiber, believed that he would be transformed into a woman and that this was part of his mission to redeem the world. And I'm going to stop there. I just wanted to point out that, Freud, who was a evolutionist, had a subject, Daniel Paul Schreiber, Schreber, who had grand delusions that transforming himself into a woman would have something to do with redeeming the world. And I'm not saying that there's a grand conspiracy here. I'm just saying that that is the level of delusion that schizophrenia, gender gender identity disorder comes with. And that the rest of this paper, it's actually 10 pages long here, goes quite in depth into toxoplasmosis gondii and its ramifications on the human brain and the human mind. And if you believe that toxoplasmosis has not been weaponized against humanity in one form or another, go out there, dig in a little deeper. I actually watched The Matrix all over again last night, The Matrix Part 1, and watched them put that little parasite in Neo's belly button, the navel, and it was quite disturbing because the images of the toxoplasmosis parasite look exactly like that little creature that they infected him with. And for him to become awake, he had to purge that from his system. And I think there is much messaging in that metaphor, and most of you should know exactly what I'm getting at. So, cheers, y'all.